What even is hyperspace? And why is it so frequently used to describe the subjective effects of DMT? To understand this, let's unpack the origins of the term, how it's used within popular culture, and hopefully this should shine a light onto why it's been adopted by the psychonaut community as the go-to term for the DMT experience. Now, most of us will be familiar with the word hyperspace from its frequent use in science fiction, most notably in the global phenomenon that is Star Wars, where the main characters have several heated conversations about making the jump to hyperspace and the various risks that incurs if not performed correctly. But Star Wars didn't invent the hyperspace concept. The first documented use of the word actually originates in 1928 and comes from The Invisible Bubble by Kirk Meadowcroft. After that, we see it become a sci-fi staple, and it's now almost taken as a given that futuristic spacecraft have some method of arriving at a destination without the occupants having died of old age or something even worse.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then it'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
The basic concept has always been fascinating to me. Some kind of mechanism is engaged, like a hyperdrive, which opens a breach between this world and another dimension, hyperspace, and then the subject is rapidly pulled in, usually with some kind of amazing visual effects. And because of the unique properties of that dimension, something extraordinary can happen, like faster than light travel between galaxies. In most science fiction, the transition between dimensions occurs while the protagonists are safely contained within their vehicle, which always made me ponder the question, what would happen if they stepped outside the ship during the hyperspace leap? And the DMT experience could very well be the answer to that question. And going one step further, perhaps DMT is in fact the hyperdrive. One reason the word hyperspace is so ubiquitous within the psychonaut community for DMT is that it maps perfectly onto the process I've just described. The subject engages the method for travel, like vapes some DMT, gets rapidly pulled in like, holy shit, what the fuck's happening? And then has the kind of extraordinary experience that DMT has become famous for. The only difference is there is no spaceship required. You are the Millennium Falcon. And this opens up an interesting perspective shift in how we even view the concept of technology. I mean, while sci-fi media nearly always requires this kind of dimension jumping to be formed by like a vehicle or a gadget, what if it could be achieved by other means? And this is not as far-fetched as it might initially sound. Throughout my lifetime, I've been introduced to concepts which once seemed like science fiction, but are now well established as fact. Like gene splicing technology, nanotechnology, biotechnology. So the point here is that technology is no longer a term that is restricted to describing things made out of metal and silicon chips. Could DMT be classified as a form of spiritual technology or consciousness technology? I believe it is, and we'll explore this in future videos. But for now, let's continue to explore some of the tropes of hyperspace in popular culture and how this relates to the DMT experience. Although the language of hyperspace is commonly deployed in fiction, there are some notable differences in both the method of entry to these higher dimensions and the resulting experience that awaits on the other side. The language itself diverges in numerous variations such as warp from Star Trek, witch space from Elite, slip space from Halo, fold space from Dune, and my personal favourites, the Immaterium and the Webway from Warhammer 40,000. Each has its own unique characteristics to help separate out these various franchises. And while some of these are basically squeaky clean tunnels from A to B, others are violent tears through the fabric of reality into like the broiling manifestations of psychic abomination. So let's explore a few of them. Star Wars and Star Trek. These two are beyond any doubt the heavyweights of the sci-fi genre in terms of popularity and fan base. But disappointingly, they also have the least interesting lore around hyperspace. Everything about the method and the technology used, it's relatively grounded, but this also makes it the least interesting. It's really just a way of getting somewhere distant reasonably quickly and for the sake of the plot. And while it's certainly cool from a visual perspective and it ticks the sci-fi nerd boxes, it's a little bit too clean and simple for my taste. It's sort of like a sci-fi version of a washing machine, in that when it works, you just take it for granted. And when it doesn't work, it's like a major inconvenience for which you call upon a hairy, incoherent beast to twat it with a spanner until it's fixed. Still, despite the rather vanilla use of the concept, I do have to give some credit for the rather cool visual effects used in each series, and for introducing the idea to the masses. One particular effect I liked in Star Trek The Next Generation was the slight distortion around the Enterprise as it made the jump to warp speed. And this kind of like stretching and pulling of a massive solid object came to mind after my first few encounters with DMT, which had the physical feel of having my consciousness squeezed out of the top of my head like it was a tube of toothpaste. On a separate note, I did want to give Star Wars some points for introducing millions of people to mystical concepts such as the Force. But then Lucasfilm kind of fucked it all up by jabbering on about midi-chlorians and releasing an endless stream of shite. So yeah, thanks for fucking up my childhood, guys. Dune. Here is where things get more interesting. Now, Dune has a fairly obvious connection to psychedelics through the central plot device of the narcotic known as melange, or more commonly, spice, which is also a term used to describe DMT, and for good reason. Within the Dune universe, consumption of spice can trigger a variety of effects depending on the quantity and the route of administration. So to cover them all would require a considerable amount of copy-paste from the Dune encyclopedia, but I'll cover what in my opinion are the most interesting effects. The first is that unlike Star Wars or Star Trek, we have a method of interstellar travel which is not completely dependent upon a piece of mechanical technology. In fact, within the Duniverse, the most important component of the hyperspace system is a biological being known as a guild navigator. And this is a kind of once human being who, through massive consumption of spice in vaporized form, has gained access to higher dimensional brain functions, advanced forms of mathematics, and an enhanced awareness of the universe. Does any of that sound vaguely familiar? With sufficient training and a steady supply of spice to keep them absolutely off their tits, these navigators can perform the necessary calculations to physically fold space upon itself and thus instantaneously transport their vessel and its cargo from one end of the universe to the other, which is a prospect I'm sure gives Jeff Bezos an infinite hard-on about the future of Amazon deliveries. Now, the second aspect of Dune's spice, which relates to the DMT experience, is the aforementioned prescience, or the ability to see the future. And this gets taken up a notch when applied to Dune's protagonist, who, due to a small dollop of luck and a large serving of a eugenics breeding program, turns out to be the equivalent of Space Jesus. And one of his many talents is described as mentally being in many places at the same time, which sounds very much like the phenomenon of living multiple parallel timelines within DMT trip. And I've talked about that in previous videos, which I'll link to up there somewhere. Contact. Contact differs from the other stories on this list because the hyperspace machine which the story rotates around is less of a speedy method for getting somewhere and is more a means of catapulting its occupant into an unknown realm which is beyond comprehension and results in possibly the most important and meaningful moment in the main character's life. And if that wasn't enough, she also encounters benevolent godlike beings who inhabit this space, and not only are they pleased to see her, but they've been actively expecting her. Now seriously, does any of that sound familiar? I think Contact actually has one of the best hyperspace sequences ever committed to film. And not just for the visual representation, which still holds up today, even though it was made back in 1997. Shit man, I feel really old. But also for the reaction of the main character who has been subjected to an extraordinary event beyond anything a human being has ever experienced. I also absolutely love the design of the hyperspace machine, which is this giant series of interconnected rings all rotating around each other like a metallic atom. And interestingly, a very similar rotating design was used in the movie Event Horizon as a means to open a door to hyperspace. But unfortunately, that little experiment didn't end up quite as happily and resulted in the crew going batshit insane and gouging their own eyes out and then sodomizing each other to deaths. So it's probably best we don't talk about that one. But it does link nicely to the next topic of Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40k is without a doubt the most bleak, miserable and violent depiction of the future that has ever been committed to paper. It's basically a universe in a perpetual state of interspecies genocide. But we'll just ignore that for the moment and focus on the one particular variation of hyperspace travel which absolutely captures the mystical, crystalline beauty of the DMT realm. Within the lore, it's known as the Webway, and it is described like this. The Webway is a hyperdimensional construct which spans the dimensions of creation, an incredibly complex network of arteries and capillaries, a maze of glowing tunnels, and a mystic tapestry of hidden threads that spread across the veil between real space and the warp. To go into further detail, it's populated by an ancient and highly advanced alien civilization who look like elves. Its structure is sung into existence out of pure psychic energy. It's vast beyond comprehension, and it houses a library which contains every piece of arcane mystical knowledge in the entire universe. So again, does any of this sound familiar? So hopefully that's been an entertaining stroll through some of the existing concepts of hyperspace, which have seeped out there into mainstream culture, and has given us some insight into why myself and other psychonauts have adopted this label. So let's do a quick recap of some of the highlights from our whistle-stop tour through the world of science fiction hyperspace. We've got the visual tunneling hyperspace entry from Star Wars, the feeling of being compressed and pulled in from Star Trek, understanding advanced high-dimensional concepts and multiple timelines from Dune, the spatial familiarity and benevolent entities from Contact, and the living psychic construction and infinite complexity of the Webway from Warhammer 40,000. Throw all these references into a blender, set the power to high until everything's thoroughly mixed, and you'll have something that maybe on its best day gives a slight glimpse into what DMT Hyperspace offers. And if you're one of those people who's yet to try it but wants a rough idea of what might be in store, this will at least give you something to work with. But when the rubber meets the road or the plasticky taste of DMT hits your lungs, it's an entirely different story. And honestly, nothing can really come anywhere close to preparing you for what is about to happen. That said, it would be a pretty piss-poor excuse for a video if I didn't at least try, so let's give this a whirl. DMT Hyperspace is not merely the method of transportation. It is in fact the destination. It is absolutely a space, and that space, as per the literal definition of the word, is indeed hyper. Over, beyond, above, excessively, above normal. This is not a swirly tunnel through which you travel, although that can certainly be a feature of the short journey that a person goes through to get there. But once you arrive, which occurs in about 10 seconds, then there is nothing swirly or melty about it. In fact, anything that you learned about psychedelics from cliched 1960s LSD-inspired art just flies out the window, because what you discover is that you are now a participant within a highly sophisticated, intelligently designed construct within your own consciousness, and that you are fully inhabiting it. And this concept of inhabiting an actual location somewhere but outside the boundaries of what you've understood as reality, this is a tough thing to get your head around. In fact, the entire paradigm of your head and the preconceived notion of what the word reality actually means is about to be seriously challenged. And this comes in no small part from what I call the spectator fallacy. Generally, human beings live very much inside our own heads as if we're a pilot sat behind our eyes operating a human-shaped vehicle called me, and we're spectating our experience as if we were watching interactive TV. Now, a full breakthrough dose of DMT reveals within approximately 10 seconds something which can take years to grasp from meditation, and that is that this experience of being behind your eyes is complete and utter bullshit. You do not spectate a DMT trip. You are the DMT trip. It is happening to you in every conceivable way, and also in ways that you are unable to conceive, but it's happening regardless. And this hyperspace realm that I'm attempting to describe is your new reality, and your brain will be scrambling in a million different directions trying to work out what the fuck is happening. And I cannot stress this enough. You do not spectate a DMT breakthrough. You can't just close your eyes or open your eyes to snap out of it. Your eyes have got nothing to do with what's going on. And even the concept of eyes is going to become absurd, along with the rest of the meaty appendages which constitutes a Homo sapien. And as if everything I've just described is not incredible enough, then there's more. Because for all its complexity and beauty, one of the truly amazing things about hyperspace is that it can also serve as a launchpad to even more unique and novel experiences. After some time parading through this interdimensional theme park, you might find yourself floating in a vast cosmic womb or in communion with what can only be described as God. The possibilities are practically infinite and can branch across aspects of your psyche you did not even realize existed. It's the opening up of doorways like this that makes DMT such a life-changing event, and I've talked about this about 1,000,000 times before, so I'll link some of that nonsense up there somewhere. I suppose what it all boils down to is that hyperspace is called hyperspace because it instinctively feels like hyperspace. And if there's ever a place that is worthy of the name, then there is no doubt this is it. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon. Of course it's the Grand Canyon. What else could it possibly be? And so it is with hyperspace. It pulls you in, you go very fast to a place that is very weird and with mind-blowing adventures lying in wait for those who are courageous enough to take the plunge. Personally, I think it's a perfect description for what occurs, and it also goes some way in differentiating it from the more organic kind of I am one with the earth type of experiences that a person typically receives on something like ayahuasca, which I've covered in previous videos. So to sum it all up, vape DMT is the hyperdrive. You set your intentions, punch in the coordinates, hit the button to engage, and hold on tight. So that's about it for this video. I just wanted to let you guys in on some news that I'm working on a book which has a working title of The Hitchhiker's Guide to Hyperspace. And in fact, everything you've just listened to was written as a chapter for this book with a few tweaks to make it work for YouTube. Now, I've never done anything like this before, so I've no idea what the process is or how long it might take. But given what I've done so far and my intimate knowledge of the source material, then I'm hoping to have it done within about the next 9 months, but we'll see. Now, if there's anyone out there who wants to be a part of this book project, then I'm looking for help with the copy editing and especially the artwork. Ideally, I want there to be a really striking visual design to the book, which does justice to the topic. And I know there are some fantastic artists out there, so if you're interested, please get in touch. And also, not to be crude, but cold hard cash is also greatly appreciated so that I can pay these people for the services. So if you'd like to support this book project or my work here on YouTube, then you can do so via Patreon or PayPal. Just like all these awesome people whose names should be scrolling around here somewhere, my deepest thanks to all these guys who support the channel, and indeed to anyone who takes the time to engage with my content, even if you disagree with it. As always, if you want to get in touch with me for whatever reason, you can do so via Discord or email me at adeptuspsychonautica@gmail.com, and all those links are in the description text below. Also, it's on my profile page here on YouTube. So I think that's it for now, and I will catch you next time.